All right, so people, Homo sapiens, have been around for about 300,000 years. That's a long time. And honestly, you gotta, when you look at how smart people are today and how intelligent people are today, and you think to yourself, as you can see right there, we've walked on the moon, and you can think to yourself, 300,000 years, you think we might be further along than what we are. So it begs the question, what exactly does it mean to be smart? There's intelligence and then there's someone being smart. And I think there's a huge difference. Intelligent people, they're the people who kind of think of the ideas and think of the problems that the rest of us don't even know are problems yet. And they think of solutions. Okay. They think of the problem and then they think of the solution and then they tell us about it. And, the smart people then learn what these other intelligent people have taught them. So yeah, it's kind of crazy. Think about that for a second. 300,000 years. And yes, it's a big deal. We walked on the moon. And yes, we know what our galaxy looks like. But 300,000 years, you would think we might be further along. I mean, let's be honest. If it wasn't for the fact, there was a few very intelligent people in our past, we'd all still be rubbing sticks together to start a fire. So that's what today's video is going to be about. It's going to be about what does it mean to be smart? What does it mean to be intelligent? How many of us, including myself, how many of us consider themselves smart versus intelligent? Drop a comment below. I'd love to hear what you think. I think we're all pretty smart for the most part, but there's very few intelligent people out there. And, there's 8 billion people on the planet almost. And I would bet you, if I had to venture a guess, I'm not, trying to do any research, but really intelligent people, there's probably right now, I would say less than 5. And I'm just a layman. I'm not a scientist. I have no PhDs, master's degrees. I don't study philosophy. I don't study physics. But I mean, really smart. I mean, really intelligent people. They're rare. They're so rare. It's like, one in a couple 100 million, maybe. And when you look at, smart people, I'll give you an example. Neil deGrasse Tyson. Great guy. I don't know him, but I love his shows. Super smart. But does he rank up there with Da Vinci or Einstein? I don't know. I'm asking you. So, like I said, drop a comment below. Let me know what you think. All these people, we're all pretty smart for the most part. We can learn things. Some people learn a little bit faster than others. Some people have to read things 3 or 4 times to get it, where others just glance at it and understand instantly. But there's a difference between being truly intelligent and being smart. All right, so we're going to look a little bit further into this. But like I said, I'd love to hear what you guys think. Please drop your comments below. All right, so intelligence. We're going to talk about a gentleman by the name of William James Sidis. He was born April 1st, 1898 in Boston, Massachusetts. And it says here that he had an estimated IQ of 250 to 300. Can you imagine that? He must have thought that he was on an alien planet, for God's sakes. He must have looked around and thought to himself, holy cow, I'm surrounded by monkeys. I mean, can you imagine having an IQ of 250 to 300? That's insane. It does say that he had some, issues. And, today he would probably have been diagnosed as being on the spectrum, which, is hard enough. And I can only imagine back in, the late 1800s, early 1900s, that was probably extremely difficult. But I wonder I wonder if there's anything. It says here he was educated he entered Harvard at 11. Wow. 11 years old. Geez whiz, I was still riding bicycles and playing tag. And this kid, he's going to Harvard to study whatever, physics or whatnot. Um, Early life and education. Son of Ukrainian and Jewish immigrants who fled persecution. But yeah, I cannot imagine. I don't know about you, but this is what I was talking about, the difference between intelligence and being smart. I mean, we can pretty much all of us can learn things. We can learn, we can learn how to read. We can learn how to do mathematics. We can learn these things. We can apply ourselves. We can study and we can learn them. This gentleman, 300, wow. This gentleman, William James Sidis, he invented things. He probably thought of, there were things rolling through this guy's mind that you and I can only think to ourselves, what is going on here? I mean, that's just insane. 300. Wow. One person I do want to talk about is Albert Einstein, but I don't know enough about him. I'm going to do a little bit of reading, maybe talk to my best friend, ChatGPT, and ask, what's there to know about Albert Einstein that the average person might not know? We've all heard he was super smart, super intelligent, the theory of relativity, all that good stuff. But, what else do we really know about him? You got to wonder. I know he was famous for his thought experiments, but, if I said to my mom or dad when I was a kid, I'm doing a thought experiment, I'd get smacked in the back of the head and say, go outside and play. Who knows? All right, let me look into Albert Einstein and we're going to talk about him. All right, so here's a way to look at William James Sidis compared to Albert Einstein. Sidis had an estimated IQ of 250 to 300. Albert Einstein's estimated IQ, 160. Okay, 160. Roughly half. Think about that for a second. We can all kind of we all kind of know the renowned reputation that Einstein has. Okay, we know he was super smart. His Nobel Prize for Physics, the theory of relativity, all these different things that that he was very well known for. And a lot of people think, Einstein is the smartest person who ever lived. But think about that for 1 second. His IQ was half, roughly, of William James Sidis. So that blows. I can't even imagine. Because I think about Albert Einstein. I think, oh my gosh, one of the smartest people to have ever walked on this planet. To have lived here and had relationships. Just how smart he was. And now you got this guy Sidis, who just his intelligence level is through the roof. 300. That just blows my mind. But think about this. Throughout this video, I've talked about the difference between intelligence and being smart. And what does it mean to be smart? And think about that for a minute. What does it mean to be smart today in 2026 compared to just a few years ago? And when I say a few, let's roll back to the year 2000. Okay? So 26 years. 2000, 2001, 25, 26 years. Think about that for a minute. I have an 8-year-old daughter, and I think she's very smart. She can jump on an iPad and do just about anything with an iPad I don't have a clue about. She'll ask me, Daddy, how do I do this? And I'm looking at her like, what do you mean, how do you do that? I don't even know. You're lucky I can turn an iPad on, let alone do the kind of things you're doing with it. So there's a difference. What is smart today? That was my ring hitting my desk. What is smart today or what was smart 25 years ago may not be considered smart today. You know, I mean, 25 years ago, we really didn't have smartphones. We had flip phones. We had the stick phones that were basically, 4 inches tall, an inch and a half, 2 inches wide. You could make a phone call on it. You might be able to snap a super grainy, horrible looking photo with it, but that was about it. Text messages were just starting to become a thing where, oh, you can send somebody a text. What the hell's a text? My phone's in my hand. Why wouldn't I just call them, right? But now you look at a kid, like my daughter, who can send text messages without even thinking twice about it or looking at the phone. Her little fingers just know exactly where to go in relationship to the edges of the phone. She can join chats and text messages with her friends and pull people into those things. So I think being smart is relative to the time, in the sense that, what do people need to know to survive and excel during that time period? And if you know those things and you're good at those things, then yes, you're smart. Okay? But this changes throughout history. Excuse me. Go back 500 years, go back 9,500, go back 200 years, okay? How many of us right now would be able to, with no electricity, no tools, survive? How many of us would know how to create a bird's nest and start a fire, okay? With just rubbing sticks together or a hand drill, something like that. How many of us would know how to do that, would be proficient enough to survive? Maybe it's an emergency situation. You're going from one village to the next. A bad storm rolls in, because remember, you don't have your cell phone that you can look at and say, oh, okay, it's going to snow later on today. It's cold because you're outside and you can feel the cold. But now all of a sudden, blizzard rolls in. Do you know how to make a lean-to? Do you know how to build that bird's nest from bark or grass or whatever you need to use to build it to get a fire started? I know how to do it. Am I proficient enough to do it in an emergency situation? I would hope so, but probably not. I'm being honest, probably not. And I think most people wouldn't be able to do it. A handful of people would be able to do it efficiently and survive. Somebody 200 years ago might look at us and say, you are a complete idiot. How could you not know how to start a fire? How could you not know how to build a quick shelter, a lean-to? How could you not know how to do these things? Okay, so that's what I'm talking about, the difference between being smart and being intelligent. It's heavily reliant on the time in which you live. Okay, and that's important to think about when we think about these things. When I say to you, what does it mean to be smart? It's all relative, okay? No pun intended, Albert Einstein. It's relative to where you live, the time in which you live, just society in general. There's so many things that we could all, claim we know how to do, but do they really serve a purpose at the end of the day? And that's the big question. All these things need to serve a purpose when you think about it. And not many of us would survive 200 years ago if we had to. Nature's way of weeding out the stupid. All right, so I'm going to wrap this video up, and I hope it gave you something to think about. I hope that, I hope, like me, it made you think a little bit differently about, your place in the universe, my place in the universe, the difference between being truly intelligent and being smart. And, maybe we all ought to take a moment to really try and be a little bit more intelligent. Think about the things that you don't think of every day and day to day, and try and think outside the box. So I hope you enjoyed this video. It was kind of fun making it. I liked it. Never heard of this guy, William James Sidis, I'm going to read a little bit more about him. Maybe I should do a video on him, because it just blows my mind to think that somebody had an IQ of 250 to 300. You know, we were all monkeys to this man, no doubt about it. All right, so again, if you like this kind of content, please by all means share it, like it, subscribe. I'm going to be making more videos, and I appreciate every second that you guys and girls watched. Thank you so much.